Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Repackaging Revolution podcast. I'm your host, David Marinak. Now, before we introduce our guest, today's title of today's show is Innovate and Adapt, the story of Vonco products. Today's guest is president of Vonco in Trevor, Wisconsin. Both a packaging company and a components company, Vonco fills a very unique space manufacturing both custom flexible packaging solutions along with flexible component solutions. Vonco started as a custom equipment and packaging pioneer. Now, with over 60 years of experience, equipment requests have shifted to designing and manufacturing customized packaging along with components. The unparalleled ability to customize liquid-tight bags of any design or shape, along with fitments using both supported and unsupported films, gives Vonco an edge over peers. Keith Smith, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, David.
Well, I think that last, and I'm going off script because when I was prepping for this show, the one thing that I really like, especially in the packaging space, are companies that really know what they're good at. One of the things that you and I talk, and I don't know if you noticed this because you're a career guy too in this space, but there's a paranoia of, oh God, don't want to tell anybody that we're the best in the business of this, or we do this better than anybody else, for fear of somebody coming and knocking them off. I mean, you were quite proud and should be of the way you guys have pivoted. Now we'll get back into all that stuff after we do a background, but that last statement saying that, you are unparalleled with what it is that you can do, I just think is such a refreshing statement from a packaging standpoint, for what that's worth.
Yeah, I appreciate it, David. My first article that I've ever done publicly was called a Hidden Gem. And I would use the term, when I found Vonco and actually bought Vonco, I had never heard of them in the 20 years of experience I've had. Best kept secret in all of flexible films.
Yeah. And it's so interesting too. Again, I promise we'll get to the background, but it's interesting when, from the packaging standpoint, we need companies that understand what they're good at. We need companies that understand, they have a very unique skill set. You have a very unique, and I know we'll get to that because you kind of parlayed that from the flexible side into the liquid tight packaging and things like that. But so many companies, I'm telling you, Keith, are just, they don't want to share. They don't, oh no, I don't want to, but it really is a hidden gem. It's very cool.
I would say too, on the other side of that equation, David, is that it's tough as an entrepreneur to say, I want to go down a single lane, because you from a generating cash and growing your business, it's like, I want to be everything to everybody. So I can do a little bit of this, I can do a little bit of that. So there's a lot of temptation to go off the fairway.
Oh yeah. Well, and especially, and I know this too, especially when you've got existing customers that look to you as that trusted partner, and you or me, we don't want to say no. But if it takes us off of our game, if it takes us down that rabbit hole, it's difficult to say, hey, Sam, I don't think we're a fit on this. Or, hey, Bob, you might want to call XYZ. I'm with you. It takes a long time for us to kind of figure out what we're good at and stay in that lane. Because I know this as an entrepreneur, you're dealing with banks and lawyers, and it's an easier sell that we can do this and we can do that. I actually think it's a better play to be very, very laser focused on something and do very, very well at that than just try to be all things to all people and willy-nilly it. Make sense?
Yes, it is an impossible task to be everything to everybody. I don't care how big you are, right? I think the best companies have figured out how to become the best companies because they figured out the one good thing that they're really good at.
Yeah. Yeah, and stay with it and dominate. I mean, that's just with the Jack Welch kind of thing, be first or second in every category. If not, it's not worth it. Not even worth it, Well, let's take us back a little bit. You're a Northern Illinois guy. I'm a Mac guy, so we're all in that kind of world. Mm-hmm. But I mean, how is it in that kind of, take us back into those early days. I know you got your MBA and both your associate degree, but was it always the dream to buy a business, to find a business? I mean, you had a couple of steps along the way, but, give me a little bit of a background on that.
Yeah. I like when I interview people in general, where resumes start. They always start at college, and we're starting at college. And in fact, it works backwards. And so the interesting thing is that usually people are shaped well before even they showed up at college. And my story is not too different, right? I've always had that entrepreneurial bug from time I could remember, whether it's just doing cleaning from retailers to retailers to earn a couple of bucks so I could get a pizza puff, or give my girlfriend a Valentine's gift, or whatever it was, right? It was how do I earn a few bucks along the way, and just constantly took business classes even during high school because I was just fascinated by people's ability to create value, I guess, right? And so that's what's always fascinated me. But I didn't really have a ton of means, so I was a victim of what was around me a lot. And in fact, I got a job at a big converter, print pack, that was close to the house, and just started printing. And I had a passion for construction because I had started getting in construction towards the end of my high school time. I co-op in cabinet making, and it was like.
And you had an engineering background with Northern Illinois as well.
Exactly, and that helps. That's what ended up just a kind of part of the circumstance. And so I was going to school and left print pack, actually earned money to go to Iowa State and to do construction engineering. And so I ran out of money there, came back, and print pack luckily took me back, and they had an education reimbursement. So it was close to Northern. So that's what I ended up doing. Northern had 3 curriculum: mechanical, electrical, and industrial engineering. So I took industrial engineering, and what I loved about it, I was working the night shift, but I could apply it at that time. So I was learning something, applying it. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But it really started to shape my ability to design processes and products. As I graduated, I got into that product side, and just learned a ton along the way. What was interesting, print pack, it was a gravure plant, and we had all types of lamination processes in there. So I just learned all about the chemistries, gluing things together, extruding things. And so it just was an awesome experience for me. But then I finished my MBA, and I wanted more. I wanted a P&L. I wanted to grow. And so this company, Appleton, bought a few converting companies, blown film companies, and we're kind of meandering with what they're going to do with it. And they started hiring some plastics people, and that's how I ended up there. It was great. It was a great opportunity for me to run my own operations and learn the rest of the side of the business that I wasn't learning being stuck into one facility. It was a huge opportunity, but where I started to get the bug, like, well, I can take this career and actually be an entrepreneur.
Exactly.
Was when Appleton said, hey, look, we want to sell these businesses. And so when I was in that transaction side and selling these businesses, I'm like, this could happen. I get the process. I can do this, right? Yeah. And, it took a while. I stayed with Appleton after we sold those businesses for about 3 years, and also took on bigger roles for them on the paper side. And I got even more sales and marketing experience. And along the way, I was looking at how can I get in, and found some partners that we thought we could pull all this together. And it took 2 years of moonlighting. It was it was a lot of strain on me and my family during that timeline.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah,
I've been there.
But ultimately found Vonco and got the deal done, and here we are 11 years later.
It's cool. You mentioned a couple of things. Number one, the engineering background, I think, is fascinating because it does give you that you're thinking like an engineer, and you're looking at processes. Meaning, I was a finance major in school, and yes, that's fine. We're looking at cash and cash flow. That's one thing, but the engineering side of things is something I didn't have. So how machinery works, or how materials flow, or how to fix something along those lines, I was clueless. And it's interesting because there's a lot of people I interview on this podcast, and they do have an engineering background. There is something that gives you that hey, you know what? If it's broke, I can fix it. If it's not broke, I can make it better. There's just a lot of very cool tie-ins with the engineering, and it was just interesting you mentioned that.
Yeah, I haven't validated this stat, but I've heard it multiple times. Is that there's certainly you see a lot of big company CEOs that come from the finance side, things like that, or sales side. But I have been told that the most CEOs out there have the engineering undergrad, MBA, graduate degree. Right? It's a very common path, especially in a manufacturing related world, right? Or in industry. So it does fit well for manufacturing for sure.
Well, and the other thing that kind of went off when you were talking was, the thing that we try to teach our kids or even young people is you don't have to be a rocket scientist or have a cure for cancer. You can make a lot of money in these niches, in these very unique manufacturing niches, or solving those problems. And I know we'll get to that in a second, but that too kind of really resonated with me, because that's something that, your background at PrintPack, your engineering background, and being able to kind of think your way through this, that lends itself just absolutely perfectly for you to be able to kind of go, okay, yeah, there is something here. Whereas most people, especially from the finance side, they're going to look at the P&L and the balance sheet, and they're like, yay or nay, yay or nay. And I think you get a much better, in my opinion, when you can dig in deeper. You can really find some real diamonds in the rough.
Well, yeah, I mean, exactly. Back to the hidden gem, right? If you would have walked in and looked at the finances of Vonco, from a finance standpoint and the growth trajectory or the lack thereof, you probably don't make that deal. But when you go in and look at the underlying engineering DNA of this company and what we could do with that foundation and what we have done because of that, that's a different lens in analyzing a business for sure.
Well, and that truly is, in my opinion, I'm just, that's the American dream. That's doing something where you're able to kind of, you don't have to be a Me Too. You're able to kind of, like you said, look at the DNA that's underneath this and then say, what else can I do with that? What else can we add to this? Because if the structure of the foundation is solid, then you can really parlay that. I just take me back to the PrintPack days. I mean, they're the 900-pound gorilla that's out there in a lot of the packaging space, but I've heard nothing but good things about PrintPack over the years. Nothing but solid people. Was that your experience too?
Oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, a lot of what, again, they from an educational standpoint, the development from the time I walked in there, from the supervisors that they had that believed in a young kid that probably wasn't really that employable at the time, and what they invested in me and developed in me. I learned so much from them. I think it's been just a solid foundation that I refer back. The biggest thing that I carry forward from that is the education reimbursement program. I mean, that was one thing that immediately, how do we develop our people? How do we invest in them? How do we help them see their dreams? I wouldn't have been able to do it without PrintPack. I tried, right? I ran out of money at Iowa State, and it all happened for a reason. I ended up back there, and they helped me get the rest of the way through that degree. So nothing but great things to say about PrintPack and what they do.
Yeah, and again, just being in the industry as long as I have too, I mean, you just know that they're a well-run, well-oiled machine. And there's certain things they're good at, and they do a very good job of it. Certain things they farm out to companies that, like me or some others, that can kind of handle that, but under the name of the PrintPack, if you will. And I just always thought they were pretty square people, and I think that's really refreshing. In this day and age, where everybody seems to be so cutthroat, and we're going to do this, and burn all bridges. I just don't see that. I don't see that as a good idea.
Yeah. It's been I haven't worked there in a long time, but I left there in 2005. But I'm assuming it's still very similar. Yeah.
Well, so now, of course, you got us up to date with Appleton, and then you kind of so take us through. Let's start out initially with what you found here. This is a diamond in the rough at that point with Vonco in the early days, and you're kicking this around. Take us a little bit further into that. What did you see from, you said, that DNA? What was that you saw that made you go, huh, maybe there is something here?
Yeah, it happened right in the exploratory phases. You had could have said it in the intro. They had built equipment that was in their DNA. Almost all the equipment in the facility was home built, and so that mechanical engineering, you know, ran deep. The original founder, von Stoser, Vonco, was his business model was to sell equipment, right? So he sold heat sealing pieces of equipment, and then when his son-in-law took over, he started selling the consumables. So let's make the equipment for ourselves and sell the consumables because the sales were on equipment are choppy. But they've never really given up on that DNA, and it still runs deep in the organization. But what I saw from a product standpoint was for the wide range of industries that they were serving, a very job shop, no real industry or vertical focus, but they were able to weld unsupported films without any challenge. It was just second nature to them. Where the industry was struggling with that concept back in 2013, and still, quite frankly, do.
Oh yeah,
and
correct.
The other
it's
thing,
a science.
Yeah, and the other side of it was the shapes. Within the shop, we have this engineering and tooling department that can make non-rectangle bags and pouches. And again, it was second nature. And as I was at Printback. Appleton was another $1 billion company, and that's not everything. We can make whatever shape you want as long as it had four sides, right?
We could seal it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And
right.
so that's what I was used to, and I was like, it's fascinated. Again, second nature, and then the ability to hold fluids. And I had worked on projects like Capri Sun and stuff before, but that was the revolution. We can't hold fluids in a pouch, and so it still hadn't evolved a ton, even in the early 2000s. And by the time I got there, and that was all we were doing, and so it was all fluid. So I said, this is perfect. I've been in retail, consumer food packaging forever. We're going to bring this to the food industry, and so that was the thesis that brought us to close the deal.
I just see such an opportunity, and I've encouraged any sales rep and anyone that we've worked with that liquids is an untapped. Yes, you focused a lot, and we'll get into it on the medical side and those kind of things, but liquids in general, we are still behind the times. If you look at Australia, New Zealand, the UK, where we're using buckets and pails and rigid plastic, and it's like, what are we doing? We can very easily package 2, 3, 5 gallons with a handle and a fitment very easily, cost effectively, but we seem to be so not lazy, but slow to change. And it's like, wait a minute, there's a huge cost savings. Obviously, there's a sustainability, environmental piece, but yet so many companies go, no, we're just not going to do it. Not going to do it. And I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot, quite frankly, and we'll talk about that whole food concept, because we all the way the story unfolds, we don't focus a ton on food, but what I do believe in general is where was the Industrial Revolution within each country, and so if you had a ton of assets already put in to fill up, tin cans or buckets.
Yeah.
Right? And you're now at a mature life cycle of your products. Are you going to invest what it takes to fill these pouches? Because it's very complicated and difficult, if not impossible, to use
Correct.
that same equipment to fill fluids into a pouch or a flexible product.
And again, I'm with you. However, I also believe that there underneath all that are tremendous opportunities. So yes, I totally get where you're going with that. I also see from the food side of things, salad dressings and oils, cooking oils, whatever. There's just a tremendous opportunity.
Well, I think it's a risk for the big brand owners that you're going to see a new small to mid-sized product line, just like you saw in applesauce and baby food, come from behind and take your market share because they've come up with innovative ways to deliver products.
Right. So interesting. So let's dig into one of the things I'm so glad that you are always so open to kind of like, just like I was saying at the very beginning, you guys are good at certain things. And take us through that, because you had mentioned when we first talked that the liquids and the medical side of things, that really wasn't the bread and butter. That really wasn't where you were. And it just kind of take us through that, because I think there's a really cool story about persistence, about ingenuity, innovation. What kind of happened with that?
Yeah, as I talked about, the thesis was all around how to take all this DNA into the food market. We weren't doing any food, and so we started down that path in 2013 to move after taking these technologies to the food market. So we started marketing heavily there. We started getting the certifications down that path, and we grew in food and did fine there. But along the way, with no marketing dollars or any advertising going towards the medical device or healthcare space, we kept getting knocks on the door. Knock. Can you do this? Can you do that? And they were all healthcare companies, top healthcare companies as well, some startup healthcare companies. And so, I'm a little dense. It took me a few years to start realizing maybe I should start telling people about what we do in healthcare and what we can provide. And so, by 2016, we had really shifted gears and said, we're going to double down in that healthcare space. We built a brand new building with all healthcare in mind and started moving completely down that space. We didn't abandon consumer, though. We still have about 25% of the business in consumer, but it's not in that food aisle, right? You talked about salad dressing, but walk on the other side of the grocery store, that, let's call it more the pharmacy side, where mouthwash and shampoos and liquid soaps and all those, you just see another sea of rigid and 5-6 times the amount of packaging weight that's necessary for these things, and such a great opportunity in that household and health and hygiene parts of the supermarket that we focus on that consumer side. And then, of course, healthcare it's fluids in and out of the body, right? It's so important there. And long ago, a lot of these things had to be stored in rigids. Hospitals just simply don't have the space.
No,
so
correct.
Whether it's an empty bag that needs to be filled with fluids coming out of the body or fluids coming in, right? It's just so much more cost-effective to use these flexible products. It's cheaper to do that because, let's face it, right? There's a different dynamic on reusability in healthcare than there is in consumer. Because of disease control, right?
Sure. 2016, you guys decide to kind of double down on this medical side of things, and because I gotta believe, and I don't know this as well as you do, but the certifications and the paperwork and the government, approvals has got to be daunting.
Maybe the one thing that was good is that I really had no idea of how much work it was really going to take. And
if you did, you would.
If I did, I probably would have done it.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So they started hiring people, and they started telling me, this is a lot of work. I'm like, okay, well, we're already here, and I've already committed to it. We're going. You come on board, help me. And so we brought in a lot of talent to really transform the certifications and our validation processes, so that we're a top tier. Because when you're talking about, this is the strange thing, I work, I'm on part of the board of the Flexible Packaging Association, and you don't really hear you have Tyvek packaging stuff being covered in healthcare packaging, but what you're really making is the device, right? When you're talking
Yes.
about putting a fluid into somebody or taking the fluid
Taking it
out and
out.
it's going into the body, these are by the FDA, they're considered medical devices, and that's not as broadly covered in that realm. It's like a medical fluid bag type of subsegment of the market, and so it's a lot different to do that. And so we really call ourselves now a premier medical device contract manufacturer because we're making devices and getting them out to the market straight from our facility. So it's just completely different world than selling roll stock that I started it in my early part of my career.
I hope you like this content. If you want more of it, I put together a Specialized Packaging Alliance, a group of packaging professionals that are in different facets of this industry. We have webinars, we have meetings. The idea is to share information about this great industry of packaging, whether that be from the sales side of things to the marketing, even to the end users. My point with this is I'd love to have you join us, the Specialized Packaging Alliance. Check out the link below to learn more. Thanks. So 2 things. Number 1, how does a company like Vonco, because you do have some very unique niches, and I think it's fascinating how the marketing has changed around the world that we're in, you, me, whatever, and the days of standing at a trade show and waving the flag are just not, those dollars aren't well spent. So I'm fascinated with how you guys have very unique skill set. And if you don't get that message across to the right person that understands, just like you described, the intricacies of taking fluid out of the body and putting it back in or whatever that is, it's got to fall on deaf ears. So I bet you have to be very, very, very targeted in your marketing and your outreach to really kind of hit that right. Does that make sense?
No,
hit that right
100%.
person?
Yeah, I mean, you hit what keeps me up at night is that it's when someone is thinking about a project that we can do they know about us, right?
Exactly.
And that's the tough part for
Right.
us. So yeah, certainly, if anyone's following Vonco, you're going to see a big digital media emphasis because just being top of mind at the right time is so important to us. Because this world is a little bit unique, though, I agree. Trade shows can be very difficult. They're low turnover, they're low results, but for a lot of effort. But getting that name out there is like, okay. We focus on some really large med device companies.
Oh yeah.
And so when you're talking about 75,000 people at a company, it's difficult to get the right person. But I find that they're very collaborative. They work across groups really well.
Good.
And so once you get one person to know who you are, you ask for referrals. Get to this next person. Oh, they might be interested in. So now you spread your tentacles out inside companies that seem to be more focused on fluids in and out of the body or transporting some of the biohazard fluids from one place to another. And as we know who those companies are, we penetrate them. It gets easier and easier to grow from that standpoint. Yeah, this is a Better Call Vonco moment because this is a very specialized case of transporting those fluids.
Well, if there's anything out there too that I've been a proponent about is this specialized packaging. Yes, that's a big broad statement. But just like you described, getting to that specific person is half or more of the challenge. Because so many companies now, when I first got into this space and you could walk into the Hoover Company or Moen Fawcett and really and truly talk to, if it's a good day, an actual buyer that has brains and they're the ones that make the decisions. Now, most companies have replaced them and they've replaced them with the commodity, Betty the clerk. They call themselves a buyer. But we got to get to that guy that's got skin in the game. That guy that's when the shit hits the fan, excuse me, but that's the guy they're going to call. And that guy, and I get where I hear you 100%. When you get to that guy, the door opens up because we're communicating at a different level. But I try to teach and train anybody who will listen is we've got to, the traditional way of walking into the Hoover Company from 25 years ago, it doesn't work today. You've got to have a message, and people need to know what that message is. And they need to clearly, just like you said at the beginning, we know what we're good at. We know what we're good at. And then hopefully if you've carried that message across that finish line, then that potential customer knows what you're good at and goes, yeah, it's a Vonco moment. This is the Vonco. This isn't like I always say, a U-line Granger application.
Right.
We got to, so that's such a, and I'm fascinated with, and that's why I like the podcast. That's why I like digital. That's why I like video, because it kind of humanizes that person on the other end. Yes, it's a screen and I'm not in front of you, but there's somebody that goes, you know what? I can speak your language, and I understand that we're not going to go from 0 to 100 and solve your problems tomorrow. We have to do tests and make samples and trial runs. I just see way too often, and I don't know, I digress, but I see way too often packaging people that they're so interested in making a deal, so interested in doing a sale, that they overlook the real pain points that they could solve and make more in the long run, and really develop that partnership with the customer that'll last forever. Yeah. And I just see, and it's really, I don't know, I just seen I've seen so many career packaging people that they're order takers. They're not salespeople, Keith. They're order takers. And there's a big difference in that.
Yeah. No, I think you're probably talking about the dilemma of all sales organizations.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I agree.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of the Challenger sale and Jolt.
Me too.
There, and as you were talking, that the transition of the buyers, they've gotten smarter. But again, I think in general, the committee approach is much broader than it was 25 years ago as well, where maybe there was one decision maker and they can make that decision quickly, especially when we're talking about let's call it the risk of the products that we provide. Even if it is Tyvek or foil packaging for a med device, it still is treated way differently than when we did overwrap for potato chip, right? So,
exactly, right.
So it's just a different profile that is done by a committee, right? And they talk about that in Jolt, where 6 or 7 people now are making these decisions. And one of the biggest challenges I face is that it's not just creating that relationship of one. I do believe there's a hub of person that can unlock a lot of spokes for the organization, and I encourage my team to find that person that's really the advocate of what we do and can help promote us within an organization. But there's still a lot of spokes of people that will be more than just an influence. They're going to have a vote at the table. And when we have these conversations, it's always around how many stakeholders were there and have we uncovered all those stakeholders. If it's 6 or 7 and you're telling me we're meeting with 2, then that's an average 6 or 7. Across the data that they put together in Jolt, that's not enough. We need to have more people there so that we understand what are all the pain points, because the pain point for the buyer is different from the pain point of the engineer versus the pain point of the product marketer, from the pain point of the person on the production floor having to use your product or pack your product, from the pain point of the person that actually uses the device, right? So it's a lot different.
It's so interesting you went there, because I was going to take us there too, because there's a courage that has to, and courage may not be the right word, but you have to have a doggedness and a determination to get a hold or get in touch with the other stakeholders. All too often, you and I both know, we've been around long enough where they throw us in a room with 1 or 2 of these people and go, those are the ones you have to talk to. It's like, no, because there's somebody in shipping, and we know somebody in engineering has to make it work on their equipment. And, and it doesn't mean we have to be a jerk or anything, but it's like, I don't want to leave that appointment without knowing, Sam or Bob, when can we talk to the other stakeholders? Because this is not an off-the-shelf solution. And we only get, let's face it, we only get really one shot to do it right. And if we screw that up because we, the engineering guy didn't tell you it has to run.
Tell you that,
yeah. And it's like, no, that's the key thing that we have to be able to really communicate and have the courage to really kind of, hold firm on, okay, when can we talk to Sam? Or when is Sally going to be in that meeting? So we can get her feedback. And and ultimately, when we get to that point, the sale is a much easier close.
I like the term courage. We talked about it earlier, right? If where like what you're good at, but you get distracted potentially to go off the fairway to do things because you want to grow, right? Saying no to that's difficult. Just think about having to say no to something that is something you can produce, but there's these hidden pitfalls because they're saying, hey, the buyer is going to represent all these parties. Saying no to that for us, we do, because it's not a cultural fit. If you're not going to bring all these parties to the table to work on this project, our success rate plummets.
Yep. Same.
Yeah, and so you have to say no early on, and just think about that salesperson when that comes, and I'm kind of the gatekeeper. When that comes up, I'm like, who'd you have at the meeting? And if you didn't have enough of the stakeholders that being represented, we say no. And so until they want to commit to getting these folks in line with us, we have such a low hit rate when that doesn't happen.
And especially the other thing that's really difficult from a sales rep standpoint is, yes, we're dealing with a P&G or some bigger player, and we get seduced by the name and we want to close them. And then they work the game of, well, you're going to do that trial run for me for nothing, aren't you? And you're going to make those samples for nothing. No, that's another courage standpoint that I try to tell to reps out there. You've got to have the courage to go. That doesn't mean we're, not, if that doesn't mean we have to, if there's a, partnership here that we'll take half or we'll work on this together, that's a different story. But so many of these big players out there just are like, I'm not paying for it. Wait a minute. So you want us to custom design this shrink material that is going to heat at this and shrink at this and be custom printed 7 colors, and we're going to do that for nothing? Yeah, if it works, we'll pay you. No, next. But all too often there's people in sales reps, but it's P&G. I don't care if it's Walmart. It doesn't matter unless they put skin in. People only appreciate really what they pay for. It could be $100, Keith, but at least they put something down. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. And that's how we roll. I mean, in some cases where it's a drop in or whatever, at least give me, put me in the system and give me a charge PO, right? Because at least there's some activity. Otherwise, I find if you just do it and you send them something in, that roll or that pouch, that box of pouches, you call 2 weeks later, well, we never found it.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, wait a minute, I overnighted it. Yeah, right. I paid a couple $100 to get it there, and sorry, we don't have it. Can you send some more? No.
It's not high on the priority list, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. So take us into where you want to see Vonco 5 and 10 years from now. Where is the sweet spot that you would love to be able to kind of, aspire to?
It really is creating value with our target customers, and I want them to be publicly declaring that we're so easy to do business with. These anything that fits Vonco, we're sending their way. So I would call ourselves a customer centric company. We have because we know what we're good at, we know what customers buy, what we're making, and we target creating value for them, right? And so, as they grow and we evolve, we want to align and continue to create products for them. We are very innovative to help them establish and innovate in their own market spaces in kind of let's call it the disposable side of healthcare. And I want them to get on top of the mountain and say, hey, this is of all my partners that I have out there in the supply chain, Vonco is the easiest to do business with.
Do you do mostly your work in North America, Mexico, or are you global
No,
now?
we're global. It depends on the product line. Our specimen transport line is well known across the entire globe, and our Enterlock line is well known in Europe. And so, and now it's starting. We're starting to get a lot of response out of South America on that.
Good
on
for
those
you.
lines, and those. That's the enteral in the body. Our specimen transport is air transport products for moving biohazards, blood, urine. Those
Yeah. Right.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. And so, so anyway, those are global products, but the companies that we are targeting are mostly U.S. based with global footprints.
And there's plenty of room, in your opinion. I know that's a silly question, but I mean, the capacity to grow now. You are poised for growth. Do I have that right?
Yeah,
You guys are ready to-
exactly right. And we've run a kind of a series of acquisition we call Project Relevance. We weren't necessarily acquiring for the book of business, so to speak, but it was to expand our ability to provide our target customers a better product portfolio and better offering and better services. And we've done a really nice job in our acquisitions as well to become a lot more relevant to these target customers.
It's you guys really remind me of Steris here in Cleveland, and I just remember when they were literally a startup, and not that you guys are, but I just remember some of the growth came internally, some of the growth came with acquisitions. They were very unique in what they were doing, and I just I can't wait to see where you guys are at in 5 or 10 years, because I just think the sky's the limit. And it's always nice to be, what I try to do here, especially in my little podcast world, is to really highlight what people are good at, number one, but also to give you an opportunity to kind of, and I'll send you the clips and the everything back, but you have a story to tell. And there's a story there that can resonate. Now, I'm not saying that, this is CBS or NBC or something, but traditional media is not the same anymore. And if you can really clearly distill what you're good at, clearly explain what you're good at, and share that in bite-sized 30, 60-second clips, you have a lot better ability to kind of open a door than if it's a long-winded sort of, like, we both grew up with the send me the brochure. Give me a line card. Like, what? A line card? What the hell's a line card? So let me ask another question. How is it, because I really am fascinated with this too. I'm a big proponent of plastic. I've always been. And I've actually jumped on the bandwagon, not on the bandwagon, but there's so many people. I went to NPE a little while ago, and I've reached out, and I belong to the Plastic Industry Association or whatever. And the attack on plastic that is unfounded, oftentimes not backed by data. I love your take on this, and it doesn't have to be like I try to tell anybody, I'm not anti-paper or anti-metal. It's whatever works best for your application. But don't tell me that one is better than the other because CNN or some third world country is floating garbage in the ocean. I mean, it just drives me nuts. Any thought on the plastic side of things?
Yeah, it's a great question. I apply this to one of Jim Collins' principles.
Oh yeah,
great. So one of his tenets is that you have the ability to be a great leader is to have the power of the and. And so when I look at packaging in general, and I look at each one of the packaging options, metal, glass,
aluminum,
rigid plastic, aluminum.
Yeah.
There's, I look at it and I said, there's trade-offs on all these packaging options, right? And you got cardboard and paper, right? There's trade-offs as you think about each one of these. And when I think about which one can actually have the power of the and 5, 10, 15 years from now, I believe flexible packaging has the best probability of having the power of the and. So what's the and? What's the either side of the spectrum? It's the greenhouse emissions, which consumers can't see, unfortunately. versus the litter, which consumers can see, and how long it stays in the environment. And I don't think you're going to find anybody debating the facts that flexible plastics are the lowest greenhouse emissions, hands down. So you've got that gold medal already. We're finishing up the Olympics. Now the question is, can you get the recyclability and renewability and reusability? And the progress that has been made in the last 5 years makes me believe better than I ever have that the power of and is real in flexible films, because we're going to solve that problem. I sat in Flexible Packaging Association where Frito-Lay,
Yeah.
more
Oh,
custom,
yeah. Yep.
talked about how they're getting plastics to dissolve in the environment for their
Yep.
potato chip bag. Just
Yep.
think about that. That's
I know.
low greenhouse gas emissions,
Correct.
renewable resources that are
And
making
barrier properties
and
to
it's
keep the
yes,
yeah.
and it's going away, right? So when I think about that future, I think we need to talk about that evolution and where we're heading much more than that past, right? And so by far, it'll take the overall communities to longer to grasp this, but as that gets out in the marketplace and realize it, I think we are in the right spot, even sitting here today.
All right, so I'm gonna ask for a favor off script, because I'm that guy that I have been saying something very similar to that for a long time. And if anyone sees me online or in social, and you nailed it, there's so much information that is out there, and I really believe, and that's why I mentioned NPE before, but I really believe the big colossal giants, the Lubrizols and GE Plastics or any of these, they're almost afraid to take a stand. They're almost afraid to stir the pot because they're busy. They don't want to be attacked by the anti-plastic people. Because I literally went and spent a day there inviting people to join me on our podcast. Let's talk about why plastic has so much advantage. People have to look at the life cycle analysis versus in the entire life cycle of a product. I don't care, paper, metal, whatever. And my ask to you is, I want to be that guy that brings people together. I want to be, not that I know this stuff, Keith, but being able to kind of bring together a community of people that are just not attacking, not, going after these. This is just state the facts, greenhouse gas. And here's the advances we've made. And here's the opportunities that are out there if our government, frankly, in my opinion, would be consistent in recyclable laws and regulations, so everybody is playing from the same handbook, all those kind of things. And I just think there's a lot of people that are afraid to do that. But you know what? In my little squeaky town in Cleveland, Ohio, I'm willing to kind of bring people together. And you know what? This isn't an attack. This isn't to say, oh, paper guys can't come on here and talk. No, I'm all for it. Bring it on. Let's go. But if we don't start talking about solutions and talking about options and talking about data and facts versus this catfighting about, I mean, that, litter, by the way, I digress, but litter is 85% intentional. People have not been taught. And look, we have an obligation. Nobody said in the plastic industry, hey, just go throw that in the side of the road. Hey, just go throw that in the ocean. No one says that. But we need a better system. And I'm all about, and I just think oftentimes when I know the National Plastics people love me and hate me because I'm not afraid to go, well, then say something. Well, we're gonna do a political action committee and say something, because people need leadership right now. Sorry.
I've been impressed with the Flexible Packaging Association's stance here and the work that they've done at the government level and at let's call it the social communication level. I'm some of the large companies that you talked about. I know that they're working on it. It might be, I don't know what their strategies are. I do think in this day and age, you do need to spend a bit of time defending yourself in the short term. But I do know what they want to achieve is just show me, right? And the work is being done. And at some point, we're just going to show them that this is the best option because you've got the power.
I hope you're right. And because a lot of times there's so much vitriol that's coming from the other side that is not backed by data, not backed by facts. And there's so many people that, and it's another digression, but so many people are just, 9 out of 10 people can't seem to think for themselves. Does that make sense to you? No. Okay, well then it may not be true. Does that really make sense to you? Do you think that steel metal can is better for? No, it doesn't make sense, but so-and-so said it. Have the courage to ask for the data. It's like teaching our kids all over again. It's crazy. All right. Well,
very emotional topic for sure, right? That's and so emotion starts to overweigh the.
And I just think there's an ability if somebody controls or at least brings together and creates that community that brings people together to literally just make your own decisions. But I'm not here to attack one side or the other. And that to me would be a very, very worthwhile use of somebody at least bringing people together. If you don't agree, then fine. Then, don't call me a jerk and hide behind, I'm xyz@gmail.com. I'm not going to tell you my name then.
Right.
Like, okay, thanks for that. So, well, the last question I always like to ask is kind of like, this is how you know I'm landing the plane. And we just talked about one of those hot buttons for me on the plastic side of things. But if you had a magic wand, if you had anything that you can do in whether it be the environmental standpoint, in plastics, in sales growth in North America, give me something that you would wave that magic wand and make change.
I would like it's probably nothing we've talked about, but it falls into the industry we serve. But I want to see people live healthier lifestyles, and so I just think a lot of our challenges in healthcare stem from a lot of the foods we eat and the diets we have, the lack of health, exercise. So when I think about even like the tube feeding product Enterlock that we launched, it was all about trying to get healthier foods into folks that can't eat normally, and that was a big passion of ours. And so if I could wave a wand, I'd love to see what our health statistics look like in the U.S. if we started living healthier lifestyles.
Interesting you mentioned that, because I've got a whole family in the healthcare industry from social work on down, and I totally am with you. It's a machine. Let's face it, the healthcare world is a machine, but it's certainly ripe for innovation, certainly ripe for change. And I think you're spot on, because I think there's a lot of people that are willing. We're seeing it now. A lot of people are willing to look holistically and go, you know what? No, I don't want to take that. I want to see if I can. And there's a place and time for all this stuff. But yeah, I'm with you. I would love to see that as well, because I think ultimately we're all going to benefit.
Yeah,
totally.
Everybody.
All right, my friend. Well, Keith, I enjoyed this. I hope you did too. Hi, everyone. It's David Marinak. I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you want to see more, here's another video that you can check out, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks.